There are many cliches about friendship and friends because finding a reliable person is hard. Some people mistakenly consider those who stay close for convenience or other goals as friends. Christy Schoen was born on September 3, 1976 in New Orleans. Her parents were military personnel on duty, so the family moved often. They managed to live in various military units across the country and also abroad. Thanks to these regular moves, young Christy was able to see the world, train her communication skills, and get to know the cultures of other countries and cities. However, the constant process of moving had typical problems. In particular, the girl faced the need to adapt to a new environment, which caused a lot of stress. But it seemed she coped well with any difficulties, and this only strengthened her character. Finally, the family settled in Biloxi, Mississippi. The teenage girl liked to cook, and it became a way to support her family and her parents with their culinary delights, since they could not always cook for themselves due to work. The girl read a lot of culinary newspapers and magazines and learned the recipes for cooking. At an older age, Christy was even able to come up with her dishes. But it was not only the culinary arts that attracted the girl. After school, at the insistence of her parents, Christy continued her education. The girl moved to Los Angeles, where she chose the Academy of Acting, which she graduated from in 2000. During this period, the beauty repeatedly performed in various plays and had episodic roles in Hollywood films. In particular, she starred in the film Terminator Genesis as a stunt woman. Christy was beautiful, athletic, sociable, self-confident, versatile, and enterprising. She found a common language with anyone. Christy knew how to present herself and demonstrate her best sides. In her free time, the heroine of the story liked hiking. Gradually, this craving grew into something more. She finally figured out what she wanted to do with her life. Thanks to her love for an active lifestyle, she decided that she wanted to help people and motivate them to eat healthily and get fit. Christy literally demonstrated to all her followers the right approach to life. She promoted healthy habits, and thanks to these interests, which in a conscious age completely absorbed the beauty, she dreamed of creating her own catering business. Christy intended to engage in classic catering, typical of the early 2000s, that is, to provide food for parties and events, delivering healthy dishes to the celebration. The business was officially registered in 2005, and the girl enthusiastically took up the work. With the help of her business, she actively promoted and positioned her brand as environmentally friendly and healthy. She also had more serious plans. Another dream of Christy was to create self-sustaining food. She spent many years developing her ideas. In 2012, she became a finalist of the 8th season of a popular cooking show on television, but did not win. Christy knew how to lose. However, in this situation, she considered what happened to be unfair. She felt that her original approach to cooking was being misunderstood. So what happened was true, but Christy was not going to give up. She decided to prove to everyone that she was ready to fight and move forward toward her dreams no matter what. In any case, over time, she dealt with the unpleasant aftertaste and returned to her activities. Christy continued to lead and expand her catering business. In addition, she began to act in other culinary programs on television. It was here that the girl met Joseph Code. He was engaged in the selection of actors and participants for various projects. The man immediately fell in love with Christine. At first they communicated as friends, but eventually they developed a mutual attraction, and the couple started dating. The man supported Christy and saw great potential in her ideas. Later, the lovers decided to move together to create a farm and start living as a couple. So they left California, sold the catering business, and moved to the small, cozy town of Lester, North Carolina, with a population of 12,000 people. At that time, they were planning to start a family, so the young people wanted to buy a large plot of land. They purchased a 36-acre plot, which was ideal for building a farm and fulfilling their dream of planning for the future and having children. The lovers officially registered their relationship in September 2014. They got married at a local community center, surrounded by family and friends. After the move, Joseph continued to work remotely on television. It seemed that this was just an ideal couple. Both were bright, ambitious, and perfectly harmonized with each other. Thanks to their talents, the young family planned a great future. In early 2015, there were serious changes in their lives. They found out that they would soon become parents and were looking forward to the birth of their first child, a girl, who the parents decided to name Skylar. It seemed everything was going just perfectly. The young family was preparing for the addition. Christy was 5 months pregnant, but this story will not have a happy ending. This whole idyll continued until March 2015, when relatives suddenly could not contact 38-year-old Christy and 45-year-old Joseph by phone. On March 15, 2015, family members had been trying unsuccessfully to contact the married couple, but all calls were ignored. The relatives lived quite far from the couple's house. They could not check themselves whether everything was okay with the young family. So they turned to Christy's friend, named Cecilia, who lived nearby, and agreed to check on Christy to find out what was happening. When Cecilia arrived near the house, she was alarmed by the absolute silence outside. There were cars in the parking spaces, but the couple themselves did not react to knocking or shouting. Cecilia began to look into the windows of the family house, but there were no traces of either a woman or a man. It seemed that they had simply evaporated. All this was strange because inside the house were their beloved dogs. The owners would never have left them alone without supervision. If they left, they always made plans to find a place for the animals, even if they were leaving for a short time. However, what had happened now seemed more than atypical for a young family who had planned everything. Christy had no trips planned on this date. She was preparing to become a mother and led a home life. She rarely left the house. Cecilia noticed traces of a break-in at the back door of the house. The friend reported all the strange things to the relatives of the missing people, after which Christy's parents decided to report the couple's disappearance to the police. When the patrol arrived at the scene, they opened the door and found that no one was inside. Suspicions increased that the couple had been kidnapped, so the police immediately sealed the house to prevent the loss of evidence. To obtain at least some information, detectives asked the phone operator for the missing couple's call data. As it turned out, there had been no outgoing calls from them in recent days, which only confirmed the fears of the relatives. The last outgoing calls were recorded only on March 10th and 11 and were made to friends and relatives. No suspicious numbers were included. Traces were actually found in the house indicating a break-in and kidnapping. Some things were missing, but there were no serious leads. The criminal had not left any fingerprints or DNA. The investigation reached a dead end before it even started. This incident stunned all the local residents. Neighbors began to discuss what could have happened to the beautiful, successful couple. Rather quickly, one neighbor contacted the police. According to him, on the morning of March 15th, shortly before Cecilia arrived at the house to check on her friends, he had seen a suspicious man near the couple's house. The stranger threw out a garbage container, an unusually large black bag that seemed very heavy, and then left. Later, the garbage from the bins was taken out, so inspecting the contents of the mysterious bag could not be done immediately. The person who threw out the trash near the missing couple's house turned out to be another neighbor named Robert Owens. He was 36 years old, lived about a kilometer from the missing couple's house, and worked as a maintenance guy, including for the missing couple. In addition to this, Robert was a close friend of Christy and Joseph. He had attended their wedding and was in close contact with them. Investigators became interested in this information and called the man in for questioning. On March 16th, Robert showed up at the station, but he refused to admit involvement in the disappearance of his friends. While he was in the interrogation room, the police officers were able to find the very same garbage bag that Robert had thrown out near Christie's house. They found burnt items, some of which resembled the remains of the missing person's clothes. This discovery made detectives' suspicions about the man's involvement in the crime stronger. When Robert was told about the bag, he immediately became confused and began to contradict his previous testimony. Eventually, he cracked. According to the suspect, on March 12, 2015, he went to Joseph's home to do some work. However, he got stuck in a ditch near their house, so Robert walked to the couple's house and asked them to help him pull out his pickup truck. They didn't refuse, and they all came to the car together. The couple was outside the truck, pushing it, while their friend was trying to get the vehicle going. However, according to Robert, something went wrong, and he accidentally hit his friends by pressing the gas pedal. They fell and lost consciousness. Robert got scared, accidentally pressed the gas pedal again, and ran over them again. He insisted that it was an accident, but at that moment, he was afraid they wouldn't believe him and would put him behind bars. In the end, the suspect decided not to call the police. Christy and Joseph didn't show any signs of life, but instead of trying to help his friends, he decided to get rid of the bodies and cover up the crime. Robert took the bodies and brought them to his home. First, he began to cut up Joseph's body in the bathroom using an electric saw, while Christy's body remained in the bedroom. At some point, he put Joseph's body in a plastic bag and then brought Christy's body in, dividing it in the same way. After that, the killer burned the body fragments as much as possible in his stove, which was located in the kitchen of his house. He did all this to hide the traces of the crime. Afterward, Robert decided to stage a robbery. He came to the house of the victim several times and took valuables. Investigators later found the badly burned remains of Christie's and Joseph's bones in the oven, which the attacker had not managed to completely destroy. Traces of blood and DNA were also found on the electric saw in the killer's bathroom, his bedroom, and on the kitchen stove. All this confirmed that there had been a break-in at the house. Robert did not deny his involvement in the incident. However, when questioned by the police about why he didn't call law enforcement if it was an accident, Robert could not answer. His story sounded completely unconvincing. The detectives did not believe his explanation and suspected that he had something to hide. They began to investigate the criminal's past. Eventually, investigators discovered Robert's possible involvement in another crime. 15 years earlier, one of his friends had disappeared under strange circumstances. The police began to examine the killer's history more closely, which led them to uncover another deadly secret. Zeb Quinn was born in 1981. The young man seemed to have a bright future ahead of him. He was enrolled in military training courses while he was still in school and planned to join the U.S. Air Force right after graduation. At the time of his disappearance, Zeb worked at a local Walmart in Shville, North Carolina, USA. That's where he met Robert Owens, a man who later became suspect for killing a married couple on the night of January 2, 2000. Zeb finished work at 9 p.m. and had plans to go on a short trip with his friend Robert to buy a new car. However, Zeb never returned home that night. His mother immediately sensed something was wrong. She had reason to believe that Zeb wasn't planning to leave for long, as he had left behind his wallet, clothes, and contact lens solution, things that he couldn't go without. It seemed he had intended to come back home, but he didn't show up the next morning or the day after. His mother filed a missing persons report. Despite the police's efforts to find Zeb, no useful information came forward. Detectives checked surveillance footage that might have shown Zeb on the night of his disappearance. The only footage they found was of Zeb leaving the store, walking out with a stranger and buying a soda. Later, the stranger was identified as Robert Owens. The video showed Zeb getting into his light blue Mazda and driving off with Robert. After that, he vanished. The police contacted Robert, the last person to see Zeb, to get more information about this case. During questioning, Robert claimed that he needed to find a payphone to call the client, so he signaled Zeb with his headlights, telling him to wait while he took the call. He claimed that he was dealing with personal issues, including depression, and had been taking prescription medication, which sometimes caused him to experience dissociation. Robert stated that, at this point, he saw a car matching Zeb's Mazda, but the driver didn't stop. Robert said he couldn't pursue the car because his own vehicle was stuck. He then walked to the area where he believed Zeb had been waiting, but by the time he arrived, Zeb was gone. Later that night, Robert was taken to the hospital due to an accident. Although police could not find any records of the crash, Robert claimed he was injured in the accident, but his story had numerous inconsistencies, leading investigators to suspect him even more. However, they lacked definitive evidence at the time to link him directly to Zeb's disappearance. The case continued to stall. In the days following Zeb's disappearance, detectives interviewed several people, including Zeb's new girlfriend, Misty Taylor, and her ex-boyfriend, Wesley. Misty had started seeing Zeb shortly before he went missing. During their investigation, it was discovered that Zeb had tried to intervene in a conflict between Misty and her ex. This had led to threats of violence from Wesley, which could have provided a motive for him to harm Zeb. But both Misty and Wesley were cleared after their alibis checked out. 4 days later, Zeb's Mazda was found in a hospital parking lot, abandoned with its headlights on and doors open. Inside, the police found several of Zeb's personal belongings, including a payphone card, some bottles, and an unfamiliar jacket that didn't belong to Zeb. The car also had traces of women's lipstick on the windshield, and DNA evidence was later recovered, though it didn't match anyone in the immediate investigation. Witnesses reported seeing a woman driving the car, and she was described as resembling Misty, but nothing could be proven. The investigation continued, and eventually a crucial piece of evidence came to light. Zeb's aunt had received a mysterious message on her pager the night of his disappearance, but she hadn't been at home to read it. Upon her return, she discovered her house had been broken into and several valuables, including the pager, were missing. The police couldn't find any traces of the burglar, which suggested the thief had been very careful. The case went unsolved for 15 years, until Robert Owens was arrested in 2015 in connection with the murder of a couple. During a search of his home, authorities discovered a hidden cavity beneath a concrete slab. Inside, they found fragments of organic matter and tissue, which were later confirmed to be the remains of Zeb Owens. In 2017, Robert Owens went to court for the murder of the married couple. The defense argued that he had suffered from mental health issues, exacerbated by medications prescribed to him, which caused him to lose control. They claimed he was unable to understand the consequences of his actions. However, Robert was still convicted, and the prosecution offered a plea deal in which he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and robbery, among other charges. He was sentenced to 74 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 60 years. In court, Robert expressed remorse, claiming that the murders were tragic accidents, but his explanation was met with disbelief. The nature of the victims' injuries did not align with his story, and the forensic evidence contradicted his claims. Despite Robert's conviction for the couple's murder, the case of Zeb's disappearance still remained open. In 2018, Robert revealed more details about what happened to Zeb. He confessed that his uncle, Walter Gene Owens, had been involved in planning Zeb's murder. According to Robert, his uncle lured Zeb to the national forest where he was ambushed by Robert and his uncle. Zeb was shot with a hunting rifle and his body was dismembered. The two men disposed of the remains in a similar way, using concrete to hide the evidence. However, the police were unable to find any physical evidence at the location Robert described. By then, 15 years had passed, and the remains had likely been destroyed by nature and animals. Robert's uncle died in 2017, so there was no way to verify or disprove Robert's version of events. As a result, the case of Zeb's murder stalled once again, just like the investigation into the couple's deaths. Despite this, Robert's conviction for the murder of the couple remained, and he was serving time in prison. The case of Zeb Owens's disappearance remains unresolved, but many believe Robert Owens is responsible for both murders. His confession, the discovery of his remains, and the timeline all point to his guilt, though the full truth may never be known. Thank you for watching.